interesting statement on page 268. And where you write that, quote, the fact that a significant portion of the U.S. electorate remains too racially prejudiced to vote for a black candidate is quite frankly one of the reasons I did not support his campaign in Iowa. And you are, in fact, I think in many ways right about that. And in fact, this is something I had to correct from the original edition. I actually did not expect the levels of racism in 2008 campaign to be that dramatic in terms of hurting Obama's candidacy. I assumed that racism was sort of a small component of the American population, mostly overwhelmingly Republican, and that the amount of sexism that was out there that hurt Hillary Clinton as a general election candidate would be worse than the amount of racism. And I was dead wrong about that. There was an enormous amount of racism. And in fact, if not for the racism, Barack Obama's victory would have been overwhelming in December, and one of the things I talk about. But I'm interested about why you, in particular, would sort of take that very cynical, pragmatic stand that I'm not going to support Obama because the racists won't vote for him. It doesn't seem to fall in line with this kind of progressive ideas.
I'm reflecting at that time on the fact that my son's got me all wrapped up in the Edwards campaign. We're looking at a lot of this public opinion data. I actually thought I had him picked in 06 when my son asked me who he should work for in the fall of 06. This is before Obama technically. Chris went to Grinnell. All these Grinnell kids go become. Iowa's insane. It's all presidential politics the year before the rest of the country has a general election. And so all these kids are going in there. I said, well, you can't work for Hillary. She's evil. If you want to feel good about yourself, I mean, Kucinich didn't seem to be doing Iowa like he did in 04. He put his eggs in New Hampshire. I said, Kucinich, yes, he should be here. I said, Edwards is saying very interesting things about class and the labor movement. So there will be a lot of movement people in that campaign who aren't just electoral people. And there were, by the way. The Edwards thing was loaded with SEIU and labor and steel worker union people and that kind of stuff. At first I didn't think Edwards was a winner. I said, you want to work for the next president of the United States, work for Barack Obama, I absolutely guarantee it. Then we got into the campaign, actually wanted them to get rid of that, and they did. Then we got into the campaign, and that was a sentiment at that time. And that's all part of the partisanship between Edwards and Obama at that time particularly. There's a lot of polling data that indicate that. A lot of people forget. It was really interesting. In Iowa, you would go and see these events in these town halls. We had a front row seat at them. And Edwards seemed to be cleaning up. And in a lot of the public opinion data, it looked like it was going to be McCain. He had by far and away the widest margin over McCain. So at that time, I was sort of in this mindset in the heat of that campaign that it was a big deal for the Democrat win and the Republican not win. And I don't want Republican office. I never do. So he struck me as the most likely. Edwards struck me as the one who was most likely to win, and I actually thought realistically that race was a part of that. But it's actually deeper than that on race in the sense in which race struck me as a liability. Race struck me as something that was Obama's race and his name, which was interesting, is his Muslim-sounding name, and his, I thought, false identification of himself as an anti-war candidate, and his flat-out novelty. I mean, you're underestimating this factor of novelty. Barack Obama didn't vote for the Iraq War because he's in the Illinois Senate. That's right. He did not vote to send the Illinois state troops into the invasion of Baghdad. You know, I thought it'd fall a little too. But all these things struck me as critical assets, and there were indications that they were among the part of his top funders that made him particularly attractive as the kind of candidate and the kind of president that alone could give the American system and the American empire the kind of fake progressive, rebels clothing, public relations makeover that Hillary couldn't do and that Edwards absolutely couldn't do. The other thing is that the problem with Obama's race, and I think it's a marvelous breakthrough of a historical barrier that a black family resides in the White House, but there is this ridiculous white fear out there in this country of the angry black man, and it's a part of the many forces that come together that do make it very difficult for Obama, even if he was predisposed to do so, and I don't think he is, be the type of person to engage in the epic battle that John Edwards was right about however fantastic and crazy and super free he wants, to say will in fact be required if you're going to have progressive reform in this country. Of course, what we really need is social movements.
Any other questions?
I didn't exhaust all my questions? Okay. John, you called Obama's election improbable. At first, you said actually you thought he was going to win later, but in your book you say you thought it was very unlikely.
Improbable quest is
quest.
Obama's line from his
Yes, it is.
2007. So I'm not necessarily calling it improbable, although in some
Well,
ways.
you've got this line in your preface. You might want to look at it. Did you see you thought it was very improbable? I didn't think it was improbable all at first. You're absolutely right to find me wavering in the heat of the campaign in '07, looking at polling data. And then you find it all of a, because of my sense that, you know what some of it has to do with walking around in 99.9% knocking on doors of white Iowa towns and some of the energy I'm taking, which is incredibly toxic about Obama. Also very toxic about Hillary, by the way, too. I mean, actually, the primary, out there in the hills out there, I'm going to tell you, people seem to hate Hillary more than they hated Obama. And then you seem to think of it all as pretty much of a positive good. I, on the other hand, for better or worse, initially predicted Obama's election in November '06. So did Glenn Ford, by the way, and a black writer, left writer named Michael Theroux. We figured that was the next president, and have a very much less happy feel about it. Do you see any downsides at all to the Obama victory? Any negative to it? Any particular sense that there are any dangers in it as well, or is it all just one positive, unmitigated good? In the same way, I'd be happy to tell you that actually some aspects of the Obama performance in the White House today that I actually like. I don't know if you want to know about that, but I'll ask you if you see anything, any downsides.
I don't know what the downside would be compared to the alternatives.
Yeah.
And you know, if the alternative was John McCain and Sarah Palin, I don't see any downside to having Barack Obama. Zero downsides, nothing. Except for maybe Tina Fey would be better off. And I would be more entertained with Sarah Palin as vice president than Joe Biden. There is that downside, but that's about the only one I can think of. And in terms of the alternatives, I think what Obama did, and one of the things he was able to do, and one of the things that I think he's been a fairly successful president so far is I think there is real progressive change that he's been able to do. Obviously there's still a lot to go, and the healthcare debate is a huge part of that. But I think one of the most important things that makes Obama progressive president so far, that a lot of people sort of now overlook and take for granted, was the stimulus package. And I think a lot of progressives, first of all, sort of say, oh, well, that would have happened anyway. And that's by no means in any way certain. I think that's a very powerful effect that Obama was able to get that done so quickly, and such an enormous thing that is a $789 billion package. Remember, back in 1993, Bill Clinton takes office, proposes a $19 billion stimulus package, and can't get it through the Senate with 57 Democrats. So the fact that this stimulus package, which had a lot of stuff in it, but a lot of very good stuff on progressive causes involving environment and energy, health, education, tax cuts for the working poor and middle class, all of these things that were an important part of the stimulus package, that alone, really, in that first month of his presidency, Barack Obama accomplished more progressive change than Bill Clinton did in 8 years. And that alone. Now, of course, you want to move on. You can't just say, well, that's good enough for me. I'll just sit back for 4 years. Obviously, you want to keep pushing that, and he has not been as successful since then. But I think that shows the kind of potential and the kind of power for a progressive movement, that if there is a progressive movement, what Obama can really accomplish.
I not necessarily wasn't saying.
Make it brief,
I wasn't necessarily saying vis-a-vis McCain as much as Hillary. I think a Democrat was clearly going to win the 08 election. I didn't think there was any doubt there was going to be a Democrat. But I must say, I am seeing anti-war forces. I'm seeing labor forces. I'm seeing environmental forces stood down in a way. There are people, and I talk to them all the time.